What are you doing?
I'm thinking.
Well, think me up a cup of coffee and a chocolate donut with some of those little sprinkles on top, will you?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memories, we grab a copy off the shelf, we pop it in the VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Of all the gin joints and murders in Chicago, Justin, we get to cover this one.
And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. All right, so Mike, we're back in the studio. It's been a while.
That's right.
We've been globetrotting a little bit.
Yeah, we got to go to New York. Now we get to go to Chicago.
Yeah, one of my favorite cities. We're going to talk about The Fugitive this week, guys, from 1993. For those unfamiliar, this was a movie for grown-ups, released in theaters, a crime thriller that wasn't direct to Amazon. People actually used to go to these movies. They weren't franchises. They were just good stories that were told in a theater in front of real people. It's kind of an interesting thing to see, Mike, you know?
Yeah, it's an amazing concept you can think of.
These are called unicorns now. There's no money in these movies anymore, but that's why I think we like this one so much. So we'll just kind of jump right in. So this movie was directed by Andrew Davis, who, Mike, I'm sure you love because he directed Chain Reaction with Keanu.
Wow.
He did Under Siege and Above the Law with Steven Seagal. Yeah, so
the part of the Steven Seagal preposition movie phrase.
Exactly. Killed a monkey, Steven Seagal. He's a native Chicagoan. He does most of his movies in Chicago,
okay.
so I kind of relate to that.
It showed.
Yeah, it's written by a couple of guys. Jeb Stewart, who wrote Die Hard, one of the movies we covered here just recently. That non-Christmas movie. He also did another 48 Hours, and he does a lot of the scripts for the TV show Vikings, Mike, which I haven't checked out yet, but I've always been on my short list to watch.
Wow.
This was co-written by a guy named David Twohy, who we all love. Of course, he did all the Pitch Black and Riddick movies. But of course, Mike, he also did Waterworld.
Oh, yes, he did. But it's so weird, the diversity of like stories these guys write. Like you mentioned Jeb Stewart there in this too. It's crazy. You would think they would, be all procedural law films, or all would do sci-fi, or they just seem to kind of go between both. It's
Not
crazy.
really genre specific for sure. And, David too, of course, just for good measure, Mike, I want to throw in. He did G.I. Jane and Critters 2. This was a development hell by definition. They went through 9 writers. Well, it was all said and done. About 25 drafts before they kind of came up with this one. It's also adapted from the original screenplays, The Fugitive, the television series by Roy Huggins. So there you go.
Yeah, that was interesting that he was still allowed to be part of this movie and made executive producer. That was a good sign. When you're looking at the opening credits, you see his name, you're like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I never watched this show. So it's from like 63 to 67.
Yeah, I was more of a 60s sitcom guy, but
yeah,
this was one of those I saw a few episodes of, and it was all I could remember of it seeing as a kid was, you hear what, the narration,
right.
Dr. Richard Kimball, murdered his, and it was narrated by the guy who played Cannon, the detective, and did the first alert ads, William Conrad.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's like the only thing that stuck out to me in that show. But from what I've heard, it was really popular, and I think it's like final episode, which they kind of wrapped everything up, luckily.
Yeah.
Was one of the most watched TV episodes of all time.
Yeah, it bucks the trend of taking a television show and developing it into a very good movie. So
the reverse effect.
We've done shows dedicated to the opposite of that.
Yeah,
with great pleasure. All right, so this was released on August 6, 1993, which is a very busy summer. We'll get that here in a second. But they had a $44 million budget, Mike. So a lot of that went to its main actor there. So, Mike, why don't you walk us through the cast?
Sure. Yeah, our main actor portrays Dr. Richard Kimball, and he's Harrison Ford, who doesn't know who he is. I was thinking he's probably, at least in our lifetime, the most iconic actor I don't know if you
Yeah.
could agree with that or not, but as far as the roles you can think of him playing, maybe Robert De Niro would be close second for us, but I don't know. Harrison Ford just, you think of he could lead a movie and it's gonna be a great box office,
Yeah, for like the late boomer, early Gen X, yeah, he's
Yeah.
kind of like the top guy for sure.
Yeah. And you had Tommy Lee Jones who plays the hunter in this movie, the FBI director, Sam Gerard. And I think he won he won a supporting actor
Yeah, yeah.
Oscar for this, right? Yeah. So for me, this was like the first movie I could think of that it was like John Travolta's Pulp Fiction, like it revived, Jones's career. And after that, he was just in everything. It seemed like in the late 90s and early 2000s, including like movies like, Batman Forever and,
Yeah, it's like that.
that great piece of cinema called Volcano, which everyone should watch.
It's like the Anthony Hopkins effect when he was in Silence of the Lambs. He was in
Yeah,
1700 movies. Yeah.
it's this revival they get, and that
Yeah.
happened a lot in the 90s, because he was in a movie. I was so glad I pulled this without looking it up, but he was in this really bad like sci-fi movie called Black Moon Rising, where he's driving this car. It's like this computerized car.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, it was such a turkey,
Nice
and
pull. Yeah.
it was yeah. I mean, I think it killed kind of his career there in the mid 80s, but like I said, here along comes the fugitive, and
Yep.
he plays these kind of roles in his sleep. The cowboy, the
Hmm.
policeman, the general or military expert guy.
Hmm.
That's just he's iconic for that now. And those are our main two guys. He has some helpers. He has like Joey Pants play his little right hand man and an FBI director guy. You have a couple of alumni from Lost. You have the guy that played Dr. Arts, Daniel Roebuck, and I forgot the lady's name. Oh, she played Rose, but she was also in here too. So I thought it's like, wait, they're both playing deputy FBI people, and here they are, like in Lost 10 years later. Lester Holt makes a brief appearance in this movie.
Yeah. One of our celebrity sightings, our
Yeah,
latest trip
man.
to New York, right?
And then we have and the thankless role of murder victim. We have Celia Ward, who
Yeah.
she was in dozens of like TV dramas, but she wasn't really a movie person. And then you had like one of Julianne Moore's first appearances here as a doctor who's like a no nonsense Cook County, doctor. And Jane Lynch is in
Emergency
this movie.
attendant. Yeah, Jane
Yeah,
Lynch. Forgot about Jane Lynch. Yeah.
yeah. And the one of my favorite pulls in this movie was the guy from Office Space, who was the wormy kind of policeman at the start who unchanged Richard Kimball from his, and then he claims that he saved his buddy.
Oh, the jump to conclusions guy.
I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand it? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Yes, that guy. He makes a brief appearance, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So that's pretty
Uh,
much that's your crew.
yeah, that's a great summarization there. Thank you, Mike. I think you forgot the biggest star of this movie was Super Bowl 20 champion Otis Wilson playing one of the cops here as a cameo. Did you catch that?
Okay. There were a
Yeah.
couple of people that you
Chicago
ever,
Bears linebacker. Thank you.
yeah, there's a couple of people that were like almost like you would think they were like fellow directors or somebody behind the scenes that just
Yeah.
shows up for like a bit part. During those interviews, that where Tommy Lee Jones is kind of going around talking to his fellow doctors and stuff. There's a
Yeah.
couple of familiar faces, but can't quite place it. They just, how we thought about on when Harry Met Sally, they're interviewing those people, and you're like, those aren't
The
actors.
can't be actors,
Those
right?
are
Yeah.
real people, and
Yeah.
that's the way I felt about a lot of this movie. But I know we'll get into it later at the end of this.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things I kind of liked, actually.
Well, as someone who grew up in that area, I noticed there's a crap ton of unknown people other than people in suburban Chicago. Like most of the news reporters are actually news reporters. They're real.
All right.
And there's people that are in every Chicago movie. They just have that look to them. The people in
Yeah.
Chicago will notice them. But yeah, some other notes on that cast. Mike Harrison Ford turned down Jurassic Park to take this role. Before he did that, Kevin Costner and Alec Baldwin were considered for the roles. Other actors considered for Tommy Lee Jones' role as Samuel Gerard were John Voight
Okay.
and Gene Hackman. So there you go.
Yeah, Hackman could do it. I could see that.
Just here's a weird inside baseball thing. Actor Neil Flynn, who some might
Oh, the
remember,
middle. Yeah.
he's the cop that got shot on the train at the end. He played a character on the show Scrubs,
Yeah.
and they actually made that a running gag. Like he kept telling everybody, the character kept telling everybody that he was in the movie The Fugitive, and no one believed him. which I
That's
thought was a
funny.
nice little running gag, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, just a couple other notes about the movie. Harrison Ford had some serious knee damage done to his ligament that he kept in the film. You notice he's got struggles with his gait, has a bit of a limp here for the most of the movie. He decided to keep that in. That parade scene was completely improv. They had like a 1 day permit to shoot. They weren't planning to shoot there for the St. Patrick's Day parade, but I thought that was kind of cool. The train wreckage was shot in Dillsboro, North Carolina, not
Yeah,
too far from here. Still there, right?
still still there along with the bus. You can
Yeah,
still
that's
see
right.
that off to the
Yeah,
side. If you ride the Smoky Mountain train ride, which I did many years ago,
yeah,
they're so happy to point out to you. And then
yeah.
Illinois Southern on the side of the train. So yeah, still there rusting away.
Very cool. The producers found it was easier to wreck a real train than to shoot miniatures of it, which is
Yeah.
totally 90s. This was a very quick shoot, only 73 days. In fact, they it was made so efficiently that they were able to move the production up before the summer into the summer season because there's some really efficient. Andrew Davis runs a tight ship, and
Mhm.
he actually shot a 2 hour and 11 minute version of this movie that the studio was completely happy with, but he felt that it was too long and kind of cut about 10 minutes out just to make it a little more tighter. So those things used to matter. Not so much anymore. Yeah.
You sound you sound really cynical tonight, Justin.
Well, it is grumpy nostalgia, Mike.
Yeah, I know, but look, just a little more than usual.
Yeah, well, this was shot, as we mentioned, in 1993, which was just such a ridiculous year for movies. Of course, you had Jurassic Park at the top of the box office that year. You had The Fugitive coming in second here. We had The Firm with Tom
Ah,
Cruise, one of our favorites, in
yeah.
third. You had Sleepless in Seattle, which is a clone of the last movie we just did, coming in at fourth. And then Mrs. Doubtfire was the fifth one that year. And this year, Unforgiven won Best Picture this year. This movie came out on August 6th. The next week, you had Searching for Bobby Fischer come out in theaters. A couple weeks later, you had Jason Goes to Hell. This was supposed to be the final Jason one,
Supposed to be.
hence Go to Hell, but didn't work. And then on August 20th, a couple weeks later, we were blessed with Hard Target, which was the
Oh
our
yes.
America's
Van
introduction
Damme.
to John Woo, who went on
Yes,
to do one of our favorites, Mike Face Off, of course.
of course.
Yeah, but he was just priming the pump, just getting ready.
What
So
was a what was the plot of Hard Target? Well, I'm assuming it was had something to do with revenge or
In the city of New Orleans, there's a new game in town. The opposition is about to get one last chance.
What kind of a name is Chance?
My mama took one. Jean-Claude Van Damme is the hard target.
money
it was
maybe
well,
wrongfully accused,
it was
perhaps.
set in the bayou, and Van Damme had a world-class mullet, and
Right.
that's probably all you need to
Okay.
know.
I'm sure they were after him for something, and he felt
Yeah,
very.
I'm guessing he probably took justice into his own hands, Mike.
Yeah, I think he felt affronted and probably I don't know had to do something to fight back. Maybe.
He probably, let his feet do the talking.
Wow.
Speaking of feet doing the talking, there's some great stuff on the music scene here, Mike. We are listening to I'm Gonna Be by the Proclaimers, the Irish duo. Had one of those earworm worthy songs ever.
Yep.
Number two on the pop charts the week this came out was Slam by the boys from Onyx. Let the boys be boys.
Uh,
We had Creep by Radiohead, and the third position on the charts, Insane in the Membrane by Cypress Hill. And of course, Mariah Carey's got to be somewhere in the 90s charts. So either her or Janet Jackson at some point, but
yep.
we were charmed with Dream Lover.
Hey, I heard that song today. It's
There you go.
crazy.
See? Yeah. So things that were going on that summer, Coachella was born, mostly as a result of Pearl Jam kind of boycotting Ticketmaster. So we kind
Mm.
of started our own little thing there. Women, for the first time ever, they had previously been banned from wearing pants in the Senate. So it took up until like 1993 for us to figure that out. Movie tickets went for about $4.14, Mike, and we started watching the Food Network that year. Speaking of the Food Network, I think when it first started, there were like three shows. It was all Emerald Vitali
Bam.
going bam, bam, bam for about 24 hours on a continuous loop. But
Legazi. Emerald,
yeah, Emerald Lagasse, yeah, they got better after a while. Speaking of foods, our favorite foods from that year, we were all down in Capri Suns at an alarming rate. The Planters cheese balls, remember those, Mike? You get them in a
Oh
can.
yeah.
They made a bit of a comeback now, but they're not the same. You could have those. Sunny D, Everybody's drinking Sunny D in the fridge. SpaghettiOs were all the rage. Some stores that went under that year. Borders Books, no longer with us. Circuit City premiered there. They're no longer with us as well.
Oh my gosh.
Tower Records was a place we were going, and that kind of fell by the wayside. Even with the most recent Vinyl Resurgent, that store hasn't kind of come back yet. Radio Shack, Mike, of course, when you had to give your Social Security number to buy a pack of batteries. And
do you know that at one time there were more Radio Shacks than McDonald's? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Were we making that many ham radios at any point, Mike?
our TRS-80 computers.
Or all they had was like radio controlled cars. I remember that being the big sell.
Yeah.
And that's what I always liked to play with when we went to the mall. And of course, Toys R Us. This is when they started to start closing up shops, which I think just finally the last Toys R Us ended up. Brick and Mortar one closed a couple of years ago, sadly. The video games circuit, Mike, we were playing Doom. We were playing Myst. Super Mario All-Stars, which I think you're probably still playing. Kirby's Adventure and Sonic CD. That was the landscape of pop culture in '93. So we were very, very busy people, but not too busy to go out to see a good movie.
That's right.
Yeah,
good summer movie.
Yeah, it was actually a thing. Me and Mike, you never know, but we used to like movies a lot, and we used to go to see them like the key word being out. We used to go out to see them at least once a week, sometimes twice.
At least.
Yeah, for about 20 years, that was kind of the status quo.
You list some of those movies, and my gosh, how could you not miss them when they were in the theater?
Yeah, more often than not, anything me and Mike talk about, if we were of movie-going age, we saw in the theater.
even Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah,
I saw that in the theater.
Of course.
Believe it or not.
Because that's what you did back then. So anyway. So speaking of going to movies, Mike, why don't we step in and go see Han Solo running from Chicago cops? So if you're ready, Mike, go ahead and hit the button. So like most efficient movies, they don't waste a whole lot of time with exposition here. They kind of embed it into the opening credits, which go on for about 15 minutes, Mike.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like the longest opening credits I could even recall. They just kept coming. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but you get a series intercut between the captions here. You get a series of like flashbacks go to black and white of this violent crime where guy breaks into Harrison Ford's house and accosts his wife, and you see the fight, and he falls down the stairs and kind of sets up the premise. They get the arrest there, and
it goes right. It's amazing how it goes right into the story. There's no like scenes, ancillary scenes of him doing surgery or
no.
And there is a scene of him doing surgery, but it's kind of related to the actual night of the murder. Yeah,
so. It's relevant to the plot in a couple ways, which is very cool.
Yeah.
But the credits kind of end with Dr. Richard Kimball, played by Harrison Ford here. He gets sentenced to lethal injection, and we're off and running.
Yeah. He's going to Menards, Justin.
That's right. You save big money there, Mike.
Save big money at Menards.
But of course, like every prison movie, you have to have a transfer, Mike, because they, So one of the first scenes after the credits stop is, Harrison Ford getting into a van with the office-based guy, as you mentioned, under shotgun escort, and there's 4 guys that get in the truck, and they make their way, and then of course shenanigans ensue. These prisoners are untrustworthy people, Mike. They're really
very crafty,
Yeah, so
that the shivs and everything.
Yeah, so about 5 miles in, one of the convicts starts to convulse, and then he pulls out a shim and he stabs one of the guards, and then being Chicago cops, they go right to the shotgun and start shooting up everybody, including in the event of that, they shoot the driver, and he kind of goes off the road and falls right into the train tracks. And as they're kind of collecting themselves, one of the guards notices that the other guard has been stabbed, and he knows that Kimball's the doctor, so he gives him the keys, and then he hightails it out when he sees the train coming. And Kimball sticks along long enough to throw the injured cop out of the truck, and then as he does that, he jumps off the side of the bus as the train makes an amazing impact. That's real effects, man. You can really tell too. It was really cool.
Yeah,
I think the jumping part was green screen, but I don't think they want Harrison Ford actually dodging a train. But So, and then he's on the run, and the movie's really in hyperdrive at this point. This is where Tommy Lee Jones shows up with his U.S. Marshals. What I thought about this group was like they were kind of the actors were really good and they were very fraternal, and you felt like you knew these guys your whole life. The interaction between these guys, and
Yeah.
it was comic relief, but it wasn't like grown or cringy. It was like they kind of added a little levity to the story. Just a really good job by all these actors for the most part, and really showed what a cohesive unit they were, and where they really did actually add a lot to the story, which I really appreciated there.
Yeah, there was a very, like organically
Yeah,
driven kind of group. And you're
yep,
right. They seem to really like, again, like just like the movie itself, the plot just kind of goes right into place. So
yeah,
you fall right into place of a group, and you're
yeah,
like, okay, well, and that they all have their, that it's not like the Twister kind of whack pack,
yeah,
they didn't have to do like you say, the snappy dialogue, but they did have,
yeah.
they of course ribbed each other a lot. So that was kind of,
Right. Yeah, you kind of facilitated the movie along. So
yeah,
they get in there and right away start, cleaning up the mess, and they start to understand that, the local cops. Of course, there's a conflict there, Mike, about whose investigation it is, because that's what you do in those kind of movies. But they come in and they start debunking some of the policeman's theories, because the policeman's obviously lying about how the whole thing went down. He actually claimed credit for saving the cop when actually he gave the keys to Kimball and then ran away.
yeah.
And then they find a pair of their leg irons, and because they're saying that Kimball had died in the accident. So right away it's established that Tommy Lee Jones really knows what he's doing, and it's really great.
We're always fascinated when we find leg irons with no legs in them.
So this is where the movie kind of goes a weird way. It's what I like best here is that Ford is a action star, but in this one he plays like a pretty much everyman. And he's vulnerable. He doesn't have superpowers. He just uses his wits and his brain, And I love movies like that. It's kind of like the Walter White effect in like Breaking Bad. He used his brain to win over a lot of situations he was in. I think Kimmel did kind of the same thing here.
Yeah, except for his little jump off the dam there. It was
Yeah, the physics were a little questionable there.
that was the only thing I had a problem with. I mean,
Yeah,
everything else, like you say, is it seems like something I'd like just I'm not gonna say you or I could do, but just an average Joe doctor could probably,
yeah. Yeah, that's a great segue because he's a doctor. As he gets injured, he kind of clandestinely moves his way into a hospital, and he knows the inner workings, and he goes in there and he stitches himself up from the accident, from the diving into the dam, which is a great scene, by the way. We didn't even talk about that,
Yeah.
but there's a scene where he's on the run and Tommy Lee Jones confronts him and corners him in this dam, and he had a great line here. He says, "Well, I didn't kill my wife," and Tommy Lee says, "I don't care,"
Yeah.
which is great, But the original
Is that
line,
was that
orig-
ad libbed?
yeah, well, the original line was supposed to be, "It's not my problem," but
Oh, okay.
Tommy Lee Jones he's really an uncredited writer. He wrote most of his dialogue here. He wanted to convey him as being like a non-emotional, data-driven,
Hmm.
like kind of,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, just didn't want him to get confused with anything other than what he was, which is the guy trying to find a fugitive. Um, but Harrison Ford's trying to solve a mystery here. It could have got very tired and stale, like your
Yeah.
typical action movie trope, with just a bunch of But what kind of pivots here is now it's a mystery, and he goes undercover and kind of starts to try to identify who the one-armed man was that was in that room that with his wife. And because he's got that background, he knows how to enter the database, and he goes into the orthopedic lab and he makes a list of all the people that were missing that arm, and through process of elimination, calling people, he starts to narrow down the list of suspects, all the while, trying to stay one step ahead of Tommy Lee Jones, who's always on his heels. That kind of culminates in a scene where he goes to interview at the Daily Center, you know, reminiscent of our Blues Brothers podcast here, Mike. But he goes to visit a convict in a federal prison and finds out that it's not the right guy. And as he leaves, Gerard has tracked him down, and it's a really kind of thrilling chase shot in downtown Chicago on St. Patrick's Day. And well, he very ingeniously kind of camouflages himself and just actually walks in the parade. And like I said, no one in Chicago knew this was happening. And Harrison Ford actually walks into like the plumbers union. That's what I love about parades. Who gives a crap about seeing the plumbers union walking in a parade?
They got a good float, Justin.
But none of those guys were aware that they were shooting a movie. They had like one guy with a single 16 millimeter camera shooting the footage, and Harrison Ford just walking. I can only imagine some of those old Chicago guys, like,
Yeah,
hey Al, I think I seen that Harrison Ford guy over there by
I've
there.
seen that fella.
But yeah, so he evades capture one more time, and then the second act of the movie is just him trying to piece together what happened, and it turns I guess the only thing I don't care too much about the movie is the ending was kind of cliche. Uh, through some of his detective work, he finds out that some of his doctors and friends had hired the one-armed man to cover up some test results of a pharmaceutical drug they were not having any results for. They wanted to keep him quiet.
Yeah,
And Kimball actually goes to the Chicago Hilton when his colleague is getting the award, and he confronts him about I know it was you and all that kind of thing. And
Fredo.
yeah, and you get kind of he has like an old man fight up here, which is so,
Again, it makes it look real though. I mean,
yeah,
it's
it's
not.
like they're these are doctors trying to throw fisticuffs. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Joey Pants gets an eye bar to the face, which that was really good. I like that part. All the while, Tommy Lee Jones is starting to understand that Harrison Ford, there's signs of his innocence everywhere, and he finds more and more signs of his innocence as the movie goes along, and he kind of pivots from trying to catch Kimball, and he tries to also like help Kimball solve this mystery. And it all culminates at the Hilton where Richard Kimball beats the crap out of his fellow guy there, and then he saves Tommy Lee Jones's life because the guy's got a gun pointed at him, and then Harrison Ford grabs a pipe and just kind of knocks the crap out of this guy. And then that kind of builds this bond, and then he takes him into custody, air quotes custody, puts him in the back of his limo and says, it's implied that he's going to be set free, and it's kind of a letdown at the end, Mike. To be honest with you,
Really?
well, I mean, not so much that you know he doesn't get what he needs, but it's just he doesn't he ends up handcuffing the one armed guy to a rail in the subway, which is pretty. I think if he killed his wife, I think it'd be a little bit more than that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
So,
and then the bad guy gets taken into custody, and he just drives off with Tommy Lee Jones into the night. So
I kind of want to see somebody either get decapitated on top of the subway or fall from the roof of the Hilton there.
I mean, it was the '90s. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Where's the villain
Where's
falling to
that?
his death?
This is too real. I don't like
Yeah.
this.
But all in all, I mean, just it's a really, as you mentioned, Mike. There's not one wasted scene here. It's just really tight, really taut, riveting type movie. Every scene just leads to the next one very organically. It's a very well told story, and again, a bit of a unicorn because these movies aren't made anymore. If they are, they're usually 45 minutes, 6 episodes at a time. Special edition runs on Netflix, so it was really nice to go back and see an old style classic crime thriller made for adults in the theater. It was really nice to watch that, and I just really enjoyed every minute of it. So, Mike, why don't we talk about a little bit about awards and accolades, and then we'll kind of get to our opinion of the movie pre and post. So this had a great big opening, $24 million, which in August back in those days was huge. Had a domestic haul of $184 million and a worldwide of $369 million. So very, very big movie. It got 7 Oscar nominations for Best Picture, but not the director. That's weird because that had never happened
That
before.
is odd.
Andrew could get no love.
No.
Tommy Lee Jones won for Best Supporting Actor here. We don't want to forget about MTV. They were really big at the MTV Video Music Awards that year, Mike, in '94. They won a Best On-Screen Duo, even though they were together for about 11 minutes total for the whole movie.
I was gonna say,
together.
yeah. It's like the movie Heat. It's like you want to see Al Pacino and De
Yeah.
Niro together, but
They
they're
do
like
one-
in just
one
one
scene,
scene.
yeah.
And that's what this one's like too.
But it wouldn't be the MTV Music Awards. They tactically get one of their categories completely wrong. The logic of it. They won for Best Action Sequence by that with that train scene in the beginning, beating out the T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park, but he's chasing the Jeep.
Oh my gosh.
I don't quite get that one. Tom Hanks won over Harrison Ford that year. Sleepless in Seattle as Best Male Actor. But the big coup de grace here, Mike, was that none of these films won Best Picture because that was taken by Menace to Society, like beating such also rans as Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Philadelphia, and The Fugitive.
Menace to Society?
Yeah, remember
Really?
that one? Yeah,
That one, wow.
yeah. Well.
That's-
I call that pandering, but that's, whatever.
Oh my
MTV.
gosh.
MTV used to be really great, guys. We promise you.
Well,
Yeah. This movie did trigger one, not sequel, more of a spin-off, the movie U.S. Marshals.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't
I
remember
think,
if I saw that or not. It was
yeah,
pretty forgettable, I
it was
guess.
it was essentially Tommy Lee Jones and his cast and characters, and I think Robert
Okay.
Downey Jr. might have been in it, but they were chasing a fugitive Wesley Snipes,
Oh,
who
okay.
probably didn't pay his taxes or
He's
something.
probably real life. I know. Again, it's real and gritty.
Uh,
It's just like real life.
Life imitates art, I hear,
It
Mike.
does. Yeah.
So let's put it through the grumpy meter anyway, Mike. So let's talk about our take on the movie the first time we saw it as younger guys, and our most recent watch, and what changed, if anything. So you're up.
Oh, well, kind of what I was saying before. I like it has a feeling of realism. The setting of Chicago is used really well. And it's different in the show. The show, I think, was like in a small town in Midwest or something. And I think he wasn't like I think the original David Jansen character in the Fugitive TV show was like just a regular doctor, and I guess they have to Hollywood it up a little bit more and have it in like, downtown Chicago and have him be a vascular surgeon. But like I said, that being said, I love like like Andrew Davis must have had. You can see his love for the town in the movie, um, except for the scenes from North Carolina, which it made me question whether Illinois had mountains. That
Yeah, there's
kind of
some geographical blunders as
yeah,
we've talked
yeah.
about before, Mike. Yeah,
There were a couple of if you look really quick, you see North Carolina license plates, and the one of the
yeah.
tunnels is on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well,
But
that's in Naperville, Mike.
yeah, okay. Or was it Menard or
Yeah,
Doverville? But yeah, I like the fact that the murder itself is vague. At least the first time, you see it in his flashbacks, and you see it through Kimball's kind of recollection of it, and it leaves just this little bit of doubt. You keep
yeah.
thinking you're going to get a swerve that he really did it. Because they're going to actually show you,
And
flashback colored scene.
90s movies love to do crap like that too. So
Yeah.
there's always you're right. That's a great point.
But I like that watching it now. It made it a little bit more effective because he
Yeah,
just had to end there. And I like the way also too that the whole the way the whole Tommy Lee Jones investigating kind of plot line unspools at a really good pace. He kind of finds out information that shows Kimball is innocent, but
yeah,
it's not done in a shocking way. Like, oh my gosh, he's innocent. It's just gradual, and he's just
yeah.
even in his portrayal of the FBI guy, he's kind of just you can see it.
It's
It's
procedural. Yeah,
yeah, it's very subtle, but he has these moments where he's just kind of looking doubtful, and it's really interesting because at the very start he is just
yep,
plain black and white. This guy did it. Let's just get him. I don't
yep.
care.
All right.
And again, like I said earlier, the people look almost like real folks. Even the cops, even the Chicago cops have the little shaded sunglasses like Mike Ditka. The one cop. I was like, this guy has to really be from Chicago.
All
This is
all the
really
rage. Then yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. But it's a story well told, and they had a really good plot to work with from the TV show, and to fit it all in a little over 2 hours. The pharmaceutical thing was a little hokey at the end. They didn't really need that angle,
Yeah,
but it still, it helped kind of end it really well. So
yeah.
I loved it.
No, great take, Mike. Again, I saw this movie. I think the summer I graduated in '93 in the theater, and just had a great time. I took all the stuff from Chicago for granted because it didn't seem new or unique to me. It just seemed kind of like it was shot in my home movies in my backyard. But I like the pace of it, and it was
Yeah.
you don't have the greatest attention span at that age, but I mean it held my interest through the whole thing, and I was really kind of captivated by it. Really liked it. Probably gave it like a 4.5 out of 5. When I watched it, for this show, that's when the nostalgia kind of kicked in again and again. Growing up in that area and then seeing all those haunts and all those neighborhoods that,
Yeah.
again, with Andrew Davis being a native Chicago, and he probably did location shoots for this movie his whole life. He knew
There's a
exactly where
lot
to
of
go.
A lot of
Yeah.
guys with slick back hair, and
There's a lot of Grabowskis.
yeah, a
Yeah.
little Polish too.
But all the accents and all, I mean, I miss all that. But again, just I think we kind of talked about these things enough. But it's just a very smart movie. It wasn't dumbed down for a larger audience, which is one of the most unique characteristics of it. You know, high school kids could go see this movie because it was so well written, and ascertain what was going on. You didn't have to like dumb it down and have extended periods of exposition, and it was just very well made. And these kind of movies, unfortunately, if they get made at all, they get really dumbed down to the point where, well, can a 14-year-old boy understand this plot? And that's kind of where these
Yeah.
things go now. But just to see practical, real effects and real actors in a real, movie, I just really enjoyed this. This was more of a nostalgic thing for me than it was actually a great movie thing. I've owned this movie since it came out. I just really enjoyed it, and just stayed right where I was, just as good as ever was, and just from a different context, it's really good. So, but one of the things I did notice is like how easy it is. I think this comes with age and perspective. How easy it is for things like this to get. These things could happen to anybody. What I thought was interesting about this movie is like the unexpected turn that your life can go through, and you could be implicated for a crime, and just how easy that was through circumstantial evidence. And that's the real villain of this is how this could potentially happen to anybody, every man. So that got us thinking here at Grumpy Nostalgia for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal. We thought we'd look at some other movies that use this trope, being wrongfully accused or accused of a crime you didn't commit, and just the fear and dread that would cause you in your life. So, Mike, why don't we pick like three movies and an honorable mention here or there? Let's talk about some other movies that use this wrongly accused theme for good or bad. So, why don't you go first?
First one I have is, I'm glad you said that word, knockoff. Um, this one could be considered a knockoff of The Fugitive, and it's called Double Jeopardy. It came out in 1999, and lo and behold, it starred Tommy Lee Jones alongside Ashley Judd,
Ashley Judd, yeah.
who is in one of her many roles where she plays a wronged woman and has to fight back.
Yeah.
In this one, I believe she's accused of killing her husband, and she has to stew while she's in jail and in prison for a bit. When she finally gets out, she has to convince her parole officer, played by Tommy Lee Jones, that she's really innocent. And it's funny because it has that kind of relation to The Fugitive, where
yeah,
the rest of the movie goes to her trying to find out what really happened. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but she has to kick a little butt in it. And
well, yeah. I love
she's
it.
actually innocent too. So
Yeah, what's great is that she used that legal technicality to like justify maybe killing again because you can't get charged for it twice. It's great. I mean, that's 90s, dude.
That was Double Jeopardy.
That's a great pick. I completely forgot about that one. Thanks, man.
I almost did too.
Yeah. So my first pick is a amalgamation of a lot of themes we've been talking about lately. I'm going to go with The Running Man from 1987.
Oh yeah.
Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Ben Richards, I think.
Yeah, that's
his name. It's a Stephen King short story about a dystopian America where they take convicts and put them on a game show, kind of like a Squid Game type thing where they have to fight to stay alive, and the whole country's watching. This one is a fever dream of a movie, Mike. We've got to cover this because I went back to do some research. So if those haven't seen it, here's the pitch, right? So Arnold Schwarzenegger's trying to stay alive. He's fighting cartoonish villains like Jesse the Body Ventura,
Jim Brown. Yeah.
Jim Brown. Yeah, he's fighting that. It stars Mick Fleetwood and Dweezil Zappa as leaders of the resistance. The game show is hosted by Richard Dawson from Family Feud. And that's just the plausible stuff, Mike. But this movie is just a fever dream, but just really great.
Set in the near future.
Set in the near, not so distant future. Very pulpy type. Great movie. Great fun to watch. Great bad movie. I encourage everybody to watch The Running Man from 1987. So that's my first pick. But he was wrongfully accused, and of course, had to prove.
Of course, he was.
Yeah. So.
All right. I cherry picked another one that has one of our actors from The Fugitive in it, and that would be Harrison Ford. Which this actually is one of my favorite courtroom movies, and it made me want to see it again when I thought about it. It's called Presumed Innocent. It was made a few years before The Fugitive. I think it was 1990, but it has him as a lawyer, and he's accused of killing a colleague that he had an affair with or relations with, and it's a really the story itself. I don't want to give away too much, but the story itself is a great courtroom. Well, not just the ins and outs and procedural kind of technique is kind of a little dry because it's actually written by a lawyer, but it's
Yeah.
has Bonnie Bedelia in it and Raul Julia to help spice up some, and
Yeah.
it has one of those obligatory kind of twist endings, but it works, and it's one of those kind of movies that leaves you, wow, I don't know how to feel about that. It has a kind of an unsettling ending, is what I'm trying to
Yes.
say. But
Fantastic movie.
he's
Yeah.
wrongfully accused, so I will give that away.
Yeah.
But this movie had the opposite effect of The Fugitive, though. It actually
Yeah.
became a TV series
Right.
after there was a movie.
Yeah. He gets off, but you're not off the hook yet. That's it. As a film,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just a
yeah. Yep,
well,
yep.
amazingly well crafted film. Great pick, Mike.
Yeah.
My next one is Papillon from
Mhm.
1973.
Good one.
Stars, of course, Steve McQueen as a he gets accused of killing a pimp in France, and it's questionable whether he did or not. But because of his situation, he gets sentenced to a French Guiana prison colony,
Devil's
uh,
Island.
Devil's Island. This is semi-autobiographical, by the way. It's
Yeah.
a true story to some degree. And it's just his it's at that point it becomes a prison break movie, and he's paired up with Dustin Hoffman here, who plays a
Mhm.
counterfeit guy. It's an epic tale. It's almost 3 hours. I used to get free movies from Blockbuster, and when I closed one night at midnight, I tucked this home and watched it. And I stayed up till 3 in the morning because I could not turn it off. It was just one of those little things that just caught me in the moment. And I remember staying up all night and watching this movie, and just even made in 1973, it just held a teenager in the 90s interest for that long. It's a well crafted movie. Just what he has to go through in the prison camp, and
Yeah.
thousands of times his failed attempts, and
Yeah.
even when he succeeded, he never really won. It was just a really gripping story about what you get put in a situation where you're wrongfully accused and you have no way out. You got nothing to lose. It's just a great movie, and Steve McQueen can't be cooler. So that's my next pick, Papillon from 1973, remade recently with Rami Malek and Charlie. I don't know, the English kid who was in Charlie Hunnam played
Oh
Papillon.
yeah. Okay.
Not a bad take on it. Kind of
Ugh.
artsy, but the original was ten times better. So Papillon,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hate when there's like that thought that why do they remake something that's
It's an
pretty
iconic film. Yeah,
it's
they're
pretty iconic. Yeah,
big
that's a good word
gamble,
for it.
but yeah, but not
Yeah.
bad. All right, Mike, what's next?
I got a couple of honorable mentions. Movie Doubt that has a story about a, priest that's possibly wrongly accused, but maybe not by the nun. And it has one of those endings
Yeah,
where you're left. Was he really was he really guilty kind of thing? And I love
yeah.
love that kind of ending. Minority Report, Tom Cruise, and he's
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
yeah,
That's a weird take on it too.
he's in charge of thought crime, but then he ends up becoming a target himself and accused of a crime that he goes on the run on the lam. But my favorite, and my absolute favorite, this is I think when you mentioned the subject, it came up within 2 seconds, was our 1995 movie called The Net, with Sandra Bullock. Yes, she's a computer analyst
Oh
who
yeah, yeah.
finds out some information she probably shouldn't, and she becomes a fugitive. All her
Uh,
personal records are deleted, credit cards are cleared out. I think somebody takes over her house, and no one seems to know who she is anymore. She even has a clone of herself
uh,
that works at her job. But anyway, she finds out through some hacking and working with a group of cyber terrorists that she gets into the giant evil computer company, which may or may not be a Microsoft kind of company, and through the use of floppy disk
okay, I'm
and
listening.
backdoor entrances, Justin, she's able to hack and find out, the nefarious goings on, and she gets her identity back. So a whole time she's on the run, though, and many
Wow,
people die. So it's very gripping.
wow. All in a 96
That's right.
kilobaud.
And again, Again, it's one of
Modem,
those movies
a
that we
phone
have to
modem.
do it, along with Presumed Innocent and Double Jeopardy. They're just aching to be re-seen.
Yeah, that movie couldn't be made now
No.
if someone was on the phone. Hey,
Yeah,
that
I
Doubt
know.
movie sounds pretty good. We should check that out. What
I've
do you
heard
think?
good things about it.
That'd be a good play. My final pick here. I've got a couple other honorable mentions. I think we can't have this discussion without naming probably two of the bigger
Yeah.
ones. Of course, is Shawshank Redemption and the Green Mile, made by the same people, essentially, same kind of premise. Those were great movies that will be covered, I'm sure, at some point on this show. But I want to go a little more hardcore, so I went with the movie called it was a documentary in
Mhm.
1996 called Paradise Lost. That was essentially like 9 hours worth of footage. Like there's three movies total to tell the story of these three kids in Memphis that got convicted of killing. Very brutal, heartbreaking trial about these three children were murdered in rural Tennessee in a very evangelical conservative community. And you had these three alternative kids that were kind of into Metallica and things you're like when you're 13, what you're into. And some of the interests they were into, got misconstrued as satanic and devil worship. And so these three kids were kind of patsies that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that there was enough circumstantial evidence to make the community think they were doing it. And they just, again, when things like that, tragedies of that nature happen or manifest themselves, if everybody wants swift justice, and these kids just kind of got sucked up in the mix here. And what was great about this documentary is like we mentioned earlier, Mike, you're never quite entirely sure if they're innocent or not. Of course, things have come to light now, of course, in hindsight, where they've DNA evidence has cleared these kids. But during the making of this film, the filmmakers were very clever in kind of planting enough seeds of doubt where you were never quite sure whose side you wanted to be on, and which made the whole tragedy even more compelling. Um, to the point where Metallica actually
Oh, wow.
licensed their music for this movie, was to get them to give up
not
anything
Napster related.
not Napster related, but they were just big proponents. They really wanted their name attached to help clear these kids' name, and these kids have gone on to become social media celebrities after that point. But just a heartbreaking story because even with their conviction and their ultimately being cleared, just the toll it took on their lives in those formative years, they lost all those things. But wrongfully accused and really, again, not having the means or methodology to do anything about it, which was really kind of the great part of that movie. So if you're ever interested in like feeling depressed for a week, watch the movie Paradise Lost from 1996. Great film. So, all right. So on that bummer, Mike, let's try to remind everybody about our stupid podcast here. So if you're interested in what you just heard, you can check us out on our social media page at Instagram. We're at Grumpy Nostalgia. If you feel compelled to send us an email, you can do that at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. You can also check out audio versions of our podcast on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel called Grumpy Nostalgia. You can check us out there too. We have some merch coming out. Me and Mike just took a trip to New York, and we saw the play Doubt. That's why we were joking about that with Lee Schreiber and Amy Ryan and Zoe Kazan, rather. It was a great play. We really enjoyed it. To the point where we thought we were just watching TV. We didn't realize that those actors are right in front of us. But in the event of doing all that, we also got to hang out with a mosh pit and headbang, and they made some fantastic merch that we'd like to share with our listeners. We've always wanted to get a mailing list set out. So if you're interested in getting on a mailing list, your private little inside club where you can get insight and input on what we'll be doing next. If you want to send us your email, we will happily send you some top choice merch for free. Courtesy of Headbang and Mosh Pit in New York. So other show news that we're kind of excited about, we talked to our friends, Podcorn Colonels, fellow podcasters in England, about doing a collaboration. They seem to be on board, and we've had some dialogue with those guys, and we're hoping that we can logistically make that work. But we're excited to be working with Harry and Adam, and we're really looking forward to. We don't know how we're going to do it or why we're going to do it, but we're going to do it anyway. So just throwing it out there. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited about that. So Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up. Anything else you want to say before we head out of here tonight?
To quote Johnny from Time of the Apes, I don't care.
Mike, I've told you, you don't mess with the big dog because the big dog is always right.
Roof,
Roof, roof, roof. So that's going to wrap it up. So for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
The question is, now did God create the Bears and make them superior to all other teams, or is he simply a huge fan and Ditka made them superior to all other teams?
It's a tough one.
All
Yeah,
right,
that is-
guys, here's your food. Who had the bratwurst?
I had the bratwurst.
All right, bratwurst.
I had the Polish sausage.
I ordered the knockwurst and pork chops. Yeah, please, next time, bring the food during the commercials, darling, all right?
Doing my job.
All right, all right. Could you pass the ketchup?